I'm your host, Zach, and this is the Hoop Junkie Podcast, where we talk all things hoops. If you're looking for another podcast to make that long drive a little less terrible, or even looking for an excuse to get out of speaking to your coworkers, this is the place for you. Enjoy the show.
Watching greatness on one end in the Bronx. There's a dude with 35 in white getting it done defensively and then offensively, taking over the violence. Mama, there goes that man. Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
Not a game. Not the game that I go out there and die for and play every game like it's my last. Not the game. We're talking about practice, man. I mean, how silly is that? And we're talking about practice.
Pulls off three quarters. Bang! Bang! It's good. Wins the game at the buzzer.
Hello, welcome back to the Hoop Junkie Podcast. First things first, please hit that like and subscribe button on whichever platform you are consuming this junk coming out of my mouth. On today's pod, we're going to cover all of the biggest news coming out of the league. But first, we start in Phoenix, Arizona. So many of you, just like myself, probably looked up late last night, probably right when they were going to bed, or even maybe checked this morning and saw that the Phoenix Suns lost a preseason opener to Australia's Adelaide 36ers in a shocking upset at home. At home on their own home floor. At this point, I'm starting to think that home court has to be cursed. Ever since Luka Doncic dropped Cam Johnson at the top of the three-point line, I don't think anything has been the same for the Phoenix Suns. You saw kind of a little bit of DeAndre Ayton at media day and some of the things that he said. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that this team last year was the odds-on favorite to win the title, and then now they're losing to an NBL team. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the NBL, it's Australia's professional league, right? They've got a lot of great players over there. In the NBL, you hear about a lot of different players, former players in the league, going over there and investing dollars in the NBL. I believe like people like I believe LaMelo Ball, and I think maybe even Scottie Pippen and some other people. Don't quote me on that, but I know people like Sean Marion and some other former players have invested a lot of money into that league, into some of those teams. So it's cool to see that basketball's growing and becoming truly a global game, because outside of football or American soccer, you got to think that basketball is growing quickly behind it as a team sport, growing on that scale. So that's cool to see. And then even with the influx of international talent today, like if you look at the top 5 players for going into the season with MVP odds, the top 4 are all international players. Isn't that crazy to think that only one out of the top 5 of MVP odds is American? That just goes to show you that the sport is really becoming a true global game. But anyways, enough of that tangent. Back to this disaster that happened yesterday. So Phoenix, at home on their own home court, they lost to the Adelaide 36ers 134 to 124. So like I said, they've been cursed in that building. Last time they played was a Game 7 blowout to my one and only Dallas Mavs. Yeah. With a 33-point loss. And it seems like as of right now, they can't shake that curse. But the 36ers were hot, man. They shot 24 of 43 from long distance. They had a couple of American players that really just took them to town. It was a Craig Randall, who you might have known him if you're some of my Memphis people. He played at the University of Memphis and then went to Tennessee Martin, and then later on to the G League. And then they also had Robert Franks, who was there balling for him as well. I think they combined, for a total of 67 points and 15 threes just between the two of them. So obviously those guys, they were definitely trying to prove their worth and showing that, maybe a couple GMs forgot about those guys. Because between two people, you can go get 67 points against a legit NBA team. That is impressive, no matter how you split it. And I get it. Some of you guys may be sitting here looking at me like, Zach, it's just preseason. Not a big deal. This is not the end of the world. I'm sure the starters didn't play. All of that jazz that's probably going through your heads right now. Well, let me tell you something. The Phoenix starters, they all played. Okay? They all played 22 minutes apiece. All of them were plus 11, but the truth is, Phoenix's bench is not that good. And then when you look at with them potentially losing people like Jay Crowder going to the year, and then you start thinking about maybe Phoenix's depth isn't what it needs to be. They're out. You take away Jay Crowder and you start looking at their bench. You got Wainwright, Craig, Biyombo, Landale, Payne, Lee, and Shamet. When I sit down there and look at that list, like, is Landry Shamet their best player coming off the bench? Oh, is Cameron Payne their best player coming off the bench, or is it Torrey Craig? I don't know. That's going to be something to see. Is like who's going to claim that 6-man role for them. Because if you look at it, I'm sitting there looking at, let's say Cameron Payne. Cameron Payne shot 8 of 19 from the field. Not too bad for him. He put up 23 points. That's huge for him. But Cameron Payne, we all know it. We know his story. He's a great role player. However, it's not too long ago that he was removed from the league. So if you don't really have those consistent go-to options off of the bench, this might be a little problem when you start looking deeper into the year. Injuries and things start coming up, and then you start looking into the playoffs. You start looking at some of these other teams and the depth that they have. This might be a little bit of an issue for your Phoenix Suns if you're a Suns fan. All right. Let's move a little bit more west to La La Land. All right, so it was news today. You kind of had some tweets from Shams. There's an article written by Eric Pincus with Bleacher Report, and a lot of different chatter going around the league about how the Lakers and Pacers almost got a Russell Westbrook deal done. Now, when you look at it, you kind of sit back and you wonder why both teams just didn't do a deal. It makes sense for both of them because at this point, the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference, they aren't set up to succeed right now. They went young last year by making that big trade for Brogdon and shipping Sabonis off to Sacramento. And then Los Angeles, the Lakers, I don't have to go into details about the struggles that they went through last year with Russell Westbrook. We all know it. Both of these teams could use change. The Lakers are trying to get better and compete and make sure that they take advantage of the last few years of LeBron James's career. And the Pacers, I don't know if they know it or not, but they need to go ahead and commit to just getting all the draft picks they can because there's this kind of a big deal out there, this 7-footer from France, if you haven't heard of him, and Victor Wembanyama, right? Supposed to be the next big thing. He's supposed to be greater than Anthony Davis was, right, as a big. He's supposed to be the Kevin Durant in a power forward / center body, right? Dude that can bring the ball up the floor, that can block shots and move really agile. So he's supposed to be the next evolution of the unicorn, right? You know, the phrase that we always tend to probably overuse and over sensationalize and give that title to probably more players than it deserves. But the Lakers and the Pacers, if you sit down and you look at the deal that as right now of a package that it could probably be, it's probably revolving around Miles Turner and Buddy Hield for Russell Westbrook. And it looks like the Lakers giving up 2 of their first round picks, 2027 and 2029 picks. You know, and so what it's looking like is that the Lakers really didn't want to move away from those picks. Pelinka said earlier in media day last week, he said, you have one shot to make a trade with multiple picks, which is true. Because as you know, if you look at the CBA, you can't keep trading draft picks. If you trade a 2025 draft pick, you can't trade the next year's draft pick. So it really gets tight and it gets limited on the type of moves that you can make when you start trading multiple draft picks. And so if you don't make the right move, it can set you behind, not only for a year, but it can set you behind for the next 2 or 3 years just because of the limited flexibility that you have when it comes to trading those draft picks. So I'm not too against Pelinka being patient on this deal. As long as he sees that there's some other options and things that they can do, or maybe that the Pacers, maybe he just believes flat out that I'm calling the Pacers bluff, which that's probably the case because this is what's going to happen. The Pacers are going to get off to a bad start. The East has only gotten deeper. You got teams that were floating at the bottom of the East like Atlanta that just went and picked up DeJounte Murray. So the East is getting tougher as we speak. So the Pacers will probably get off to a bad start, and they'll sit around, they'll look around the room and say, all right, we need to make some moves. Because you sit down and you look at Miles Turner. If they don't get rid of Miles Turner can up and walk after next year anyways, because I believe he has like 1 more year left on his deal. So they have to sit back and really come to grips with themselves and make something happen. Otherwise, Turner's just gonna walk, and they lose him for nothing. So I see, I get it that they're not necessarily they're coming off like they're not in a rush. And they're telling other teams that Turner isn't available. But the truth is, that's a situation that's going to have to happen because Turner is a veteran now. He's not going to want to sit around and say, okay, yeah, we're going to go draft this young kid and we're going to go through this rebuilding process with a whole bunch of young players and young talent around them. He's not going to do that. So they are going to lose him for nothing if they don't trade him. And the Lakers, they know that. They know that. That's why they're not doing the desperate move. So you know what? Shout out to Pelinka for holding it to him and not just folding and being desperate. Because you look at the history of the Lakers over the last few years, a lot of moves have been made out of desperation. Right? When you do what you did to go get a Russell Westbrook. Hey, I get it. You're trying to maximize LeBron's career. So I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, you have to be a little desperate. I'd be desperate. If I've got arguably one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest, the second or third greatest, right? Depending on how you rank him, he's up there. If you're a GM, you're gonna do what you got to do to make sure that he is happy with you and he can see your vision. So right now, I guess shout out to Pelinka. If I had to choose a side on kind of which GM I think was had the better hand of the situation, I would probably have to go with Pelinka, because you sit there and you look at, if I'm Indiana, I'm sitting there looking like, okay, I get to take on Russell Westbrook and and I get to take on that huge contract, but I also get to maybe bring him in, and I can dump Buddy Hield's, the rest of Buddy Hield's contract, and ship off Miles Turner, and then take on Russell Westbrook's expiring deal, and get 2 more first-round draft picks to add to my collection of picks. Man, I don't see why the Pacers wouldn't take that deal if it ever gets offered by the Lakers. So that has to be what Indiana has to be angling for, is trying to get those 2 picks to make it a done deal. But if it gets to a point to where the Lakers are like, no, we're not going to give up 2 picks. If you could talk them into maybe getting one of the first, and then maybe a couple second, or something like that. I don't necessarily know exactly the picks picks the Lakers can exchange, but I imagine that there's something that could be worked out. But that's probably the biggest news that came out of today. That's still developing. We're still trying to figure out all the details and nuts and bolts about what those conversations look like. But if that was a deal that could happen, I think that would be a significant deal to both sides. Okay, all right. And then let's do a quick little roundup about some other news going around the league, just so you are informed, you know what's going on, because we got 30 teams and we've got a lot of players. So if you look around the league, the Heat, they lock up Tyler Hero with a 4-year, $130 million extension. So he just got him a big deal. We might dig a little bit deeper into that on the future pod, and then just kind of see him, maybe a deep dive into the future of the Heat's organization and kind of where they think they're going in the future. And then the Grizzlies, them and Steven Adams agreed to another 2-year extension. So it looks like the Grizz are going all in on this core of a team, and they haven't made any big trades or big roster moves over this summer. I think that they like the team that they have. If you're them, you can't blame them, because everything they've done has seemed to work, right? I mean, all their draft picks have hit, and then they're still a really young team. A lot of room for growth. I'm a little worried about the Jaren Jackson Jr. injury going into the year. That might be a little bit of a problem, just being in the Western Conference, losing either your second or third best player, and a truly defensive anchor. For if it's significant time, that could be a little bit of an issue. But other than that, man, you really have to like what they're doing over there. The Nuggets, their GM got a multi-year extension. Good for them. I mean, they put a real good team around Jokic. So you got to get that man paid, right? Larry Nance reached a 2-year deal with the Pelicans. 2-year, $21.6 million extension. Congrats, Larry, for getting paid. And then also you got Blake Griffin getting signed with the Boston Celtics. So good for him. So those are just a few things going around the league. And so I guess I'm probably going to get on out of here and call it quits. Guys, thank you for tuning in to the Hoop Junkie Podcast, episode 1. I can't wait to see you guys again. Maybe next time we'll mix it up a little bit. I'll try to maybe get a couple guests in here. If not, you guys get to hear me just talk about basketball, right? But until next time, guys, enjoy your day.